It's very difficult to schedule being a parent to a child. Like, you got to be there when they need you.
When they need you, yeah.
As opposed to expecting them to need you when you're there.
They're just so full of life and aspiration, and the kind of backgrounds they come from are so different and varied and difficult for the most part.
We've had kids in the 9th standard who want to be doctors who say, I should be studying arts to be a doctor. Like, that's the level of awareness. We had a girl last year who I think almost ran away from home. Some of these teachers, they get paid 5,000 rupees a month. So we had a lawyer come last year, and 2 of these girls said, we want to be like her. But one of the things we realize is where kids fall apart is in the transitions. If anybody knows somebody, like somebody we know knows somebody who needs money for education, we're just going to give it. I believe that selling is such a fundamentally important skill. Most of us can sell and most of us don't know it.
Suraj, thank you so much for having me today. Like every time, I'm just amazed at what you've been able to achieve, and just energy that I get from these students. They're just so full of life and aspiration, and the kind of backgrounds they come from are, so different and varied and difficult for the most part. I remember the way we started the session today, like, it was very, very difficult for me to handle. Like, I did not know what you want to say when you spoke about a student who had lost her father and her sister a year back, and how everyone has to rally around. And someone said we have to make her happy in small ways, or someone said that, we'll have to take her mind off things. They're a very emotionally aware bunch of kids, right? And I'm assuming that a lot of they face the average difficulty faced by them is a lot more than what I grew up with, for example, or maybe what you grew up with. So, first of all, thank you so much for putting your time, effort, and energy into something so noble. I'm sure you derive a lot of joy out of it yourself doing it.
It's been amazing.
You seem very happy when you come in. But talk about Eka for our viewers. If we've had Viren on the show and you in a large format show, but talk about your involvement with Eka, what it is, and where we are today.
No, so first of all, thank you for coming. It's very energetic day, and I think they learned a lot. You should talk about what I think they took away. But the idea to start Eka came out of a realization that economic and social mobility is coming down in India. So there's a World Economic Forum report from 2020, which calculates God knows on the basis of what, but they say that it takes 7 generations for an Indian in poverty to become an average, like to achieve average economic status today, right? And we went into sort of what is causing it. And we realized one of the things that's happened in the last couple of decades has been a tierization of Indian education. So in our time, when I was growing up, there were government schools and there were convent schools. And that was basically it. Today, it's 4 tiers. There's international schools on top, then there's convent school, and then there's low-cost private school, and then there's government school.
Yeah.
And none of these tiers interact. It's not like you have inter-school tournaments across these.
Yeah.
And so you have people growing up in very different economic classes. And a lot of
this tierization exaggerates those classes even more, you say?
I think it embeds them, because a child who's going to a low-cost private school, which by the way, in many cases are much worse than government school, and we're talking about it. Some of these teachers, they get paid 5,000 rupees a month. I mean, they just QC passes, right? They're not trained teachers. And I've been to schools, you go to schools, even in Bangalore, where there's a lot of English speaking, an English medium school where they're being taught English and Kannada, right? Effectively. And so you've got kids who are graduating from school who score quite well in the board exams, but actually can't express any complex thought in English. Their mother tongues, they've not read any literature in, they've never done critical thinking in, they've not studied technical topics in, so they can't express complex thoughts in their mother tongue.
Yeah, mother tongue is also colloquial.
Also very colloquial, right? And so you get kids emerging from these government schools and low-cost private schools who actually, are already disadvantaged from a pure ability to express themselves, ability to form thoughts, express thoughts. And a lot of the interventions, unfortunately, I think in the sector, there's some great interventions, but a lot of them tend to be very focused on specific angles. So numeracy and literacy in high school, or gender sensitization, or entrepreneurism, all of which are great. But one of the things we realize is where kids fall apart is in the transitions. So when I'm transitioning from school to junior college, from junior college to bachelor's, how do I choose? Um, we've had kids in the ninth standard who want to be doctors who say I should be studying arts to be a doctor. Like that's the level of awareness, right? And I think a part of what we're realizing, it's now been 2.5 years and we're learning as we go. So the fellowship is a 7-year fellowship. We identify 30 kids every year in Bangalore who are coming into the ninth standard. And our commitment is we will stay with you until you get your first job. And so we're obviously learning. We now have 2 batches. We'll have our 3rd cohort by next year. But we're also realizing that even the ninth is so late to catch some of these kids that we need to make a plan B, plan C, plan D for them. And what's been really interesting today when we talk about things like sales or marketing, I mean, I thought the native intelligence of these kids, just the way they articulated these ad sort of insights
was amazing.
Shaving, kind of their confidence in going and selling. And even so, we've done the selling exercise with kids from more privileged backgrounds also together. And you can see, you watch those kids and these kids, they go towards different customers and their ability to address a different segment of customer, to understand that segment of customer. It's actually great, but many of these kids would not have even known that sales or marketing are real options because they hear about engineering, they hear about medicine, they hear about police and teaching. And then there's a whole bunch of people, unfortunately, coming and selling them vocation. Right? Which is be a plumber, be a welder. Nothing wrong with those professions. But they don't really, not all kids have those aptitudes.
Correct. And what do you see in the from 2 of these kids now? Let's it's been 2.5 years. The first cohort and where they are now, or the kids on whom the impact has been for a period of time. Where do you see it change?
So we've seen a few interesting changes. So the first is almost all of them. So in the first cohort, bar 2, have gone from not speaking English at all, in general, to speaking English very confidently.
Oh, really? That's a big shift.
It's not necessarily good English, but the realization has been that you take kids out of their context. So we get kids from 14 different schools, and they come spend this day with us every month, and we spend a week with them residentially every year. But you get them in a different context, and you kind of say, we're only going to speak English here. They start speaking. Right? And once they build that confidence, it just gets better and better and better. And even the 2 who last year was not speaking, I can see that I can already start seeing shifts in them as well. So English has been one. The second is we spend a lot of time focusing on emotional language, on developing vocabulary, on developing more tools to deal with adversity, right? So last year, some of our kids unfortunately got into trouble in school for violence or what have you. This year we don't hear it. And we can see that a lot of them are much better settled. So I think those are the 2. The third thing I would say is that their awareness of the world is just much higher, right? So last year, this year we're doing it at WeWork. WeWork has been very kind in donating us space. But just being in this environment, knowing that they can enter a building like this and feel like peers to everybody here, makes a huge difference. And then listening to different professionals. We had 15 professionals last year come and talk about what they do. You also came last year. We went and sold on the streets. I think these things just kind of raise their own confidence to say, I can take on the world. Right? That's a big deal for me.
And do you see yourself doing this year after year? Like some of these kids, like 10 years down the line, do you see yourself attending their weddings?
I wonder. I don't know.
And see them as parents? Because this seemed like a long-term vision for you.
So the way we're thinking about this is, how do we become, in a sense, over the 7 years? I don't know what happens afterwards. Maybe I'll be dead. But over the 7 years we work with these kids, how do we become another mama for them? Right? Somebody that they can phone when things go wrong. Unfortunately, you can never time when a child goes going off the guardrails. I mean, I'm a parent. I see that I can't. It's very difficult to schedule being a parent to a child. Like you got to be there when they need you.
When they need you,
as opposed to expecting them to need you when you're there. And so what we're trying to develop with these kids is a relationship where they call us. And then we had a girl last year who I think almost ran away from home. Thankfully, she called and we were able to sort of stabilize that. We've had cases of violence in the home where we've tried to sort of stabilize some of those things. Today, parents will often call us before they call the school if they need help. And what we're trying to do is just, we work with different partner organizations. We don't want to do everything ourselves, but at least you have the kids know that if I want to know how to follow this path, if I want to think about this or that, like right now we have someone who's come there, sitting with 3 kids there, who say they want to be sports people. And he plays for the Bangalore FC, but he's also a quant trader. So he's talking about how do you sort of pursue a passion in sport while also creating backups and not kind of leaving it all there, right? So we're trying to give them what each of them needs and make it available.
You get joy out of this?
A lot of joy. I think it's the best use of my time ever. I think the reality is, 2 things. I think one, as a professional who's grown up in privileged India, I've never interacted this much with people from an underprivileged background. I've learned immensely about their contexts. So I think I'm much kinder to an auto driver today, who kind of cuts me off because I kind of can imagine what his life is like or what he's thinking or where he's coming from. But I also feel like an hour spent with these kids versus an hour spent with MBA grads, I think these kids get a lot more out of it because it's just a much rarer commodity for them. I don't know if you feel the same. I know you interact with kids everywhere.
Yes.
But they're like sponges. They're looking for it.
Agree. They're curious, a lot more curious. And because we are in this situation, this kind of interaction will only happen with you. With like kids from like privileged backgrounds, they'll have this kind of interaction with their parents' friends, with their parents, with relatives, etc., etc. So it becomes one of many. Here it's one of one. So,
they come and they lap it up and they love it. And we had a lawyer come last year, and 2 of these girls said, we want to be like her.
Yeah.
Like, we just want to be like her. We want to have that confidence. We want to be able to sit and just speak and command a room.
The way she has.
And that itself is for them to see that kind of a person was like, I can see they've changed after these 2 guys, right?
That's amazing. Our audiences are watching, and probably a lot of them want to kind of do something in the education space, but may have busy lives, maybe younger, maybe resources are scarce and so on. But any final words of, because they would have followed what has happened here and probably, kind of gotten some triggers in their mind as to what they can do. But any words of advice?
Yeah, I think the big learning for me in the last 3 years has been, a lot of us care, but we don't prioritize. And I think there's a time in life to prioritize. I think 10 years ago, I couldn't have done what we're doing today. But I think it's so important if you want to make a difference to get proximate. Yeah, so one of the things that we did for 5 years before we started Eka was to actually just say, if anybody knows somebody, like somebody we know knows somebody who needs money for education, we're just going to give it.
Yeah.
Not on merit. I think merit is quite meaningless actually beyond a point. And really just to understand what are the problems people face and to start figuring out where can we make a difference. I think the biggest mistake we make is we sort of think from our own perspective and we'd say, if I was this child, this is what I would want. But that's not what the child is.
Yeah. It's true. Everyone's different. I agree. I completely agree. So Suraj, thank you for having me. Thank you for having our teams. Thank you for letting the Eka scholars sell Bombay Shaving Company razors in
Shivaji Nagar bus stand.
I sometimes feel like viewers, given how sensitive our viewers, sometimes feel like people are like, so using child labor to sell your stupid razors, and I'm like, no, hold on a second. There's more behind that.
I think that,
so there is that angle too.
No, I understand that's an angle, but I think in this case, frankly, the reality is, so I'm a big believer, and we do this for privileged kids as well when we run camps in Inner Compass. I believe that selling is such a fundamentally important skill, and most of us can sell, and most of us don't know it.
Yeah.
And I see with kids, there's a before I tried selling and after I tried selling our
confidence. Yeah.
And there's a change in the child, right? It's a favor we're doing these kids by letting them understand whether they like it. And some of those kids, you look at them and you can see that the first sale they make, it's like, I can do this.
Smiling,
I've got this, right? I can.
It's an unlock.
It's a huge unlock. Everyone should go and sell.
Absolutely. So thank you, Suraj. Thank you so much. And to the team, I won't disturb them right now, but thank you.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Privilege to be here. Thank you so much.